Hello, my name is Jackie Clay. I'm the County Superintendent of Schools for Cochise County. Thank you so much for inviting me into your home, your office, or wherever you are virtually. Welcome. I'd like to take the next 45 minutes to talk about CTE and systems thinking and education. So I'm getting ready to share my screen. Give me a minute to do that. Just a minute. Want to definitely make sure it is the right screen. I think it is. All right, then. You should be able to see a screen, and basically it says CTE and systems thinking, connecting the dots in education. My story first, I'd like to introduce myself again. My name is Jackie Clay. I retired from the military, 25 years of service, and I retired as a command sergeant major. From there, I went into education, and I've been an educator for approximately 15 years. After that, I became the county superintendent of schools. But even before that, during my educational journey, the majority of that was CTE, Career and Technical Education. I was a CTE teacher, a CTE director, and then eventually I became the assistant principal responsible for CTE and other core subjects. As you can see on the slide, my educational journey, I am currently pursuing a doctoral degree in organizational leadership. I've been married 33 years. I have 7 children, 20 grandchildren, and 1 great grandchild on the way. And I've been a Cochise County resident since 2001. I love Neil Postman's quote about children. He says that children are the living messages we send to a time that we will not see. So education is so important to me, as is to you, I'm sure. As a county superintendent, I want to show you our focus and how this correlates with systems thinking, CTE, and education. So I'm going to talk about what we focus on. We focus on connecting the dots in Cochise County so that we can move forward, ensuring, and you'll see this a lot, economic independence for all of our students and economic success for our county. We're all in this together. But to do this, we can't do this alone. We do this by partnering with our home schools, our charter schools, our private schools, our unified school districts, our high-risk schools, which includes our detention center and our jails. And collaboratively, we work with governing board members, administrators, teachers, students, parents, businesses, industry leaders, community members, and other stakeholders to help our students succeed. These members in the second paragraph are part of our educational system. And this is the system that should work together so that we can move forward and obtain sustainability. The thing with education is, and sustainability and systems thinking, is that we have to try to take one stone and put ripples in as many people's ponds as possible. So to do that, all those who are non-educators, we need to show them and explain to them what education is about and the purpose of education. When you look online and you look up the purpose of education, you get a lot of long, sometimes very difficult reasons or purposes. But just to bring it down and make it simple, the purpose of education is to discover one's natural attributes, Everyone's born to be and do something. Everyone is, no matter what. And what education does is help find what that purpose is, that natural attribute is, and then is correlated with the community, county, state, nation, world. That sounds a little CTE-ish to me. And also the purpose of education is to provide motivation, direction, and purpose for our students. Once they have the purpose and know what their natural attributes are, that purpose will equate the passion, which will equate to them doing better in school or wanting to do better because they see their future in doing the thing that they were purposed to do. Another purpose of education is to increase our GDP and GNP. That means that our exports and imports, especially our exports. When we have creativity within our country, we're able to sell these items, these products or services to other countries instead of us buying a lot of products and services from outside the United States. We should be the ones who have the students who are thinking totally out of the box, filling in the gaps of needs for this global economy, which definitely will increase our GNP. And I'm going to say in GDP also. So these are some of the purposes of education. When we explain this to the other people in the other parts of the system, which was in the last slide, we start to put ripples in other people's ponds. Instead of education being just for the student, just for the teacher. Truly, education is the foundation of everything that we do. Sharing our vision with the different people in our system. Our vision is economic independence for our students and economic success for our county. Again, one rock, many ripples. When we explain these things, we should explain it where people understand that they have a part in this. So one of the things that we need to do, we need to improve our educational culture. Improve it. In some places, it's great. In some places, we may need a little bit of work, but to improve it, to improve our culture, everybody has to own education. Education is not a spectator sport. Everybody has to play. To reach the sustainability, we need feedback and realignment. To realign ourselves, if we're not aligned, okay, this is an alignment. If we're not aligned, then we need to get realigned. And the only way we can get realigned is through feedback, talking to each other, finding those venues where we can come together with the meetings of the minds and of ideas. Connecting the dots. This is where we have to figure out what venues we're going to use to provide feedback and communication for our system. And remember, who's in our system? All those people that we mentioned earlier. The history of our focus in Cochise County, 2017 to 2018, was connecting the dots for student success. Then 2018 to 2019, moving the needle for student success. 2019 to 2020, a learning community for student success. Remember, if the student is successful and they become economically independent, then the county, the town, the state, our nation will become successful. COVID hit. And even though we were in a learning community for student success, which is a very important part of systems thinking, because a learning community gives each other information, thrives on feedback, continually aligns themselves. We all are singing the same song. We're looking at the same data. We have goals, and our goals are basically, of course, the same. Economic independence for our students equals economic success for our county. COVID hit, and this 2020 to 2021 has been facing the future together. We are still a learning community for student success because we still need to learn. We still need data. We still need to trade ideas. We still need the meeting of the minds, not just the educators, but everybody in that educational system. But now we're facing the future together. So back to systems thinking. In systems thinking by Senge, you have mental models, shared vision, personal mastery, and a learning community. We have to become a learning community. That's a very important part of systems thinking. That means effectively communicating, no acronyms. You know, I'm also a part of ABEC. That's the Arizona Business and Education Coalition. And one of the things I've learned by talking with businesses is that we as educators, we use too many acronyms. And we use them so much that when we are talking to people outside of the education field, we don't notice it because we're so excited about what we're talking about. Their eyes are watering and they have lost track of what you're trying to say because they don't understand. So we have to communicate effectively, and we have to be ever growing and ever learning. So systems thinking and education through systems thinking. We have to allow our community to know, or let our community know, that a system consists of interrelated parts that impact one another in a process that usually produces outputs. That means that with our educational system, our outputs are students who have purpose and motivation and passion. They're validated. They stay, and they stay within our communities. We don't export many, you know, some will have to leave. But again, a system consists of interrelated parts that impact one another in a process that usually produces outputs. Outputs are our students doing amazing things, doing what they were meant to do, their natural attributes. So in a system of, let's look at the body as a system. The body can't support life unless all the parts work together. Well, the same with an educational system. It cannot support life or be sustainable unless all the parts work together. That means all those parts that we talked about earlier need to reframe who they are and what they should be doing. And they also need to be validated. I was working with a businesswoman in Douglas, and the one thing that she impressed on me more than anything was that, Jackie, once you validate the people, they will get into motion, and it will start that momentum of helping the school system in ways that you could never imagine. Not just in ways of giving money, but in other ways. No part of the body is more important than the other. And those parts that you don't see are usually the most vital. Are we telling the people in our education system that there are parts of our educational body that is hardly seen, but they're so important? It's just like the body. You know, we have two hands, we can do it out one. We have 2 feet or 2 legs, we can do it out that. We can do it out an eye, an ear. but we can't do it our heart or our lungs. These are things that our internal organs that we need so that these parts of our body can work. Think of the parts that you see as the teachers, but what makes all those things work? We need the support. I was talking to a group of clergy a couple of years ago, and I told them, I said, just because you don't say you're not part of the body, it doesn't mean that you're not. If you look at the picture, the heart can say, I'm not part of this body. Does it make it not part of the body? It's still part of the body. It may not work as well with the body, or the body may not work as well as it could or to its potential because that heart doesn't have the heart in it. But the heart isn't doing what it should do. And I told the clergy, you know that you're like the heart of education. You have great influence of the people. And just because you say that you are not involved and no, you're not an important part. Yes, you are. You're a very important part. People listen to you. So what parts of our educational system where it influences other parts are we missing? Are we validating everyone? Or are we asking for money and help when we need it? We should bring everybody in and continue to learn and grow together. We have to realize that each entity depends on the other. Think of our educational system while working independently. So each part of the system, yes, they will work independently, but they also have to realize that they have to depend on each other. The governing board depends on the people, depends on the chamber, depends on businesses, depends on teachers, students. All of this is interconnected and interrelated. And not only that, interdependent. So let's look how an entire system works. Let's look at ours. I have some questions for you. Who's part of your system? Who's part of your educational system? And does that system communicate effectively to all parts? Or just some parts communicate and the other parts are left out? Is the system misaligned? Is the system fragmented? Does the system, your system, realize that all parts are interdependent and equally important? That's everybody. Does the system provide feedback to all of its parts? And does the system continually realign itself due to feedback to obtain sustainability? These are some questions I want you to ask yourself about your system, your educational system. And then we're going to come back to those questions again later. So here's some of the parts of our education system. Educators and support staff, legislatures, post-secondary institutions, city and county officials, community members, school boards, businesses, students and family members, jail and juvenile detention, district superintendents. Ooh, county superintendents. Thing is, we have to reframe who we are and what our niche is in the system. And notice the arrows, everybody's talking to everybody. There isn't, when it comes down to it, there isn't a clear hierarchy. Everybody should be talking to everyone, sharing ideas. Now, I know that's really hard for some people to grasp. No, but think about it. If we communicate and we validate each other, then we can move forward. It's essential that we understand the interdependent nature of our system and the importance of feedback. If there is no effective conversation regarding the needs of our education system and community, then our system will falter and become extinct eventually, because we will not be able to reach sustainability. We won't. Our students will go away, our businesses will go away, our families will go away, and they will move somewhere else. We can't ignore that. The ultimate goal is that feedback drives the system towards the goal of self-sustainment. Now, for an educational system to be self-sustained, that doesn't mean that the school operates in a silo or the district operates in a silo. The self-sustainment has to do with the whole environment. Education is not a closed environment. It is an open environment. What happens on the outside of a school district affects the inside of the school district, and vice versa. It is an open environment. It is an open system. So we need to continue those lines of communication and become a learning organization. This picture right here, fact, there is not one educator sitting at this table. And this was a meeting we had, and we had a lot of tables. But this particular table, we had mall manager, we had some parent, we had some board members. I think that was a teacher. So we had one teacher there. All right. But we were talking about issues that were going on within our school district and strategies. That validates people. That creates buy-in. Bloom stated that when an organization stopped learning together, a general overall access to collective knowledge slows or stops and the unit fragments. When communication stops, when people feel that it's none of your business, or you wouldn't understand, or I got this, or work in silos, that system will fragment and they will break off into silos. That confuses students. I've been in cities and towns, counties, where there are great things, the state, great things are happening. Business are doing great things for students, but this business is doing the same thing that this business or this school or this organization or what, they're doing great things, but there's no connection. So the dots aren't connected, and we are stronger together than apart. So we need to have that overall access to collective knowledge. Fragmentation of an organization occurs when parts of the system fail to operate as a cohesive unit. And fragmentation stems from unawareness of interdependencies. Look at your system. You know, if you were to sit down and write down all of the different parts, if you take time to do that, write down all the different parts of your system. Does each part understand that they're interdependent to the other? That can't happen if there's no one's talking. That can't happen if there's no validation. We all have to be aware of the interdependencies within our system. Fragmentation occurs when parts of the system either lose their ability to communicate across the boundaries, formally or informally. We don't need silos. We need to gather all of our resources, all our creativity, all of our ideas, thinking out of the box, filling in the gaps. One person or one part of the system can't do that because not one part knows everything. And when one part of the system feels that they know everything, well, look at your school system, look at your education system, and you tell me what's going on. Is your system fragmented? If there is no conversation regarding the needs of the school, again, and the needs of the community, our system will falter and become extinct. There are cities across the United States, and there are towns in Arizona that are just about boarded up, just about ghost towns, because there was no conversation. And we're not talking about arguing and backbiting and being mean and nasty. We're talking about agreeing to disagree. We're talking about the developing strategies. We're talking about, even if we disagree, we can go out and have a burger and a soda later and say, hey, we just disagree, but we still are in unison and our goals are still the same. No school district wants to be extinct. No city, no town, no county. We want to grow and we want to thrive. We need to have conversation. That's what systems thinking is all about. As we're having these conversations, do you talk about CTE facts? Do they know that CTE addresses the needs of industries and help close the skills gap? Does everybody in your system, and please, if you haven't, get something to write with, get some paper and draw the circles and the lines. Is there communication taking place right now? Does everybody know that about CTE? Do they know that CTE has always, if you look at the history of CTE, has always evolved in response to economic needs in our communities, in our state, in our nation? And the CTE is a major part of the solution to many national economic and workforce problems, such as high school dropout rates, a weakened economy, and global competitiveness. Do they know who's taking the time to make that happen? I'm challenging you to figure that out. Do they know that high school students involved in CTE are more engaged, graduate at higher rates, and typically go on to post-secondary education? And that participating in CTE is associated with a lower chance of dropping out and a higher chance of graduating on time? Do they know that? Do they know that the average high school graduation rate for students concentrating in CTE programs is 95% compared to the overall graduation rate of 85%? One rock, many ripples. That means a lot. If there is no economic independence for our students, then they can't give into the system. They can't pay taxes into the system. They can't do the things that they're meant to do within the system. Other things that should be talked about. If you know anything about Expect More Arizona and the progress meter, with us, we had an issue with our third grade reading. Only 43% of our students could read at the third grade. And you know that's one of the most important times of a child's life. Because up until then, a student was learning to read. But after third grade, they have to read to learn. That is a problem, and was our problem, and still is our problem. But the thing is, we talked about the problem, and we didn't leave it up to the educators. We all dug in and was figuring it out. How do we change this? This is a we thing. Another thing that's shared with the community, we took a survey of the top 5 educational concerns in Cochise County. The survey only had 2 questions. The second question, it said, put an X in the box on your top 5 concerns. This survey, we received over 1,000 replies back. We had asked businesses and religious organizations and anyone we can find to please put this on your website, and we'll share the data with you. And we did. We had a meeting, a county superintendent roundtable, and we talked about these things. So we had these 5 groups, and people sat in the group that they were most interested in or felt that they can do the most good in. And they were given 30 minutes to sit with people with like concerns and try to figure it out. And then after, the 20, 25, 30 minutes, then each group had to present to all of us what they came up with. And of course, we wrote everything down. As a county, we weren't fixing things, but everybody who was at those tables had the opportunity now, or had the opportunity to go back to their school districts, their communities, their towns, and implement some of the things. So these were the 5: teacher retention, funding, salary, behavioral health, and school culture and climate. We will be putting out another survey soon. But this is what is talked about. This validates, this reframes. Something else that we need to talk about. This was a study by ASU, which basically showed us that 10% of what goes in the classroom affects test scores. 60% of out-of-school factors affect test scores. That's a big one. That's a paradigm shift, if I've ever seen one. Because now, when we show our community that, here we go, it becomes an us thing now. It becomes a we thing. It becomes a why thing. It becomes a what can we do to help thing, not an shame thing, not a pointing the finger thing, but a let's move forward and get this thing fixed. So again, 60% of out of school, how should I say this? Your test scores, 60% of out of school factors affect test scores, while 10% of in-school factors affect the test scores. What actually affects test scores that are out of school factors? Here they go. And when we looked at this as a community, we were able to pick some of those things that, hey, we can help, we can help, we can help, we can do somebody, or we know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who can help. We even had people, we had our legislative leaders there. Wait, we can help. Inadequate medical and dental vision care, food insecurities in the family, language spoken at home, et cetera, et cetera. Can you imagine what now because of COVID? I can imagine this is going to grow immensely. The venues for all this feedback and giving all of this information, remember, we are a learning community, or should be one. That's one of the tenets of systems thinking, to become a learning community. We had innovations, every year, we've had an Innovations in Education conference. This conference is not only for educators. This conference is for our community, parents, businesses, students, legislator, community members, governing board members. We all have to sing the same song. We all need to know what the acronym SEL means. It's a biggie, right? Social, emotional learning. Well, what's so great in our county, a lot of non-educators understand what SEL is, social emotional learning, and some of the challenges and what we have to do to help our students. Well, it's not just the teachers who's responsible for that. We're all responsible. Businesses, parents, yes, teachers, community, organizations that support students. If we become a learning community and start learning together, and then always given the opportunity to talk about what we've learned so we can increase each other. This is how we move forward. More venues, the county survey, we talked about that. The superintendent's roundtable, we do that once a year. We have a student advisory council. This is where students come and talk to me about how they see things. And wow, how they see things differently than we do. Not better, not worse, but differently. And this is another piece of information that we need to reach sustainability. Our educational advisory councils, we have one in Douglas. If you go on to Speckmore, Arizona, and go and look at partners, Douglas Advisory Council is there, name and lights. And I will tell you, the Douglas Advisory Council, and it's what they do is they are the voice for education locally and statewide. They look and see what the gaps are, what the problems are, what the data is, and they help the schools. Our council, and I'm a part of that Douglas Council, we have the minimum amount of educators. They're mostly businesses. Oh my goodness. Our doctors, Dr. Milk. Yes, I gave you a shout out, Dr. Milk. And all of our other community members who come together to say, listen, what can we do? Okay, this is what we're going to do. You guys continue to teach, and we're going to augment what you're doing because we're concerned about our future and about our students' future. And I'm not saying that no one else is, but we have to find venues to come together. We have CTE workshops, advisory councils, industry workshops. We have meetings with our business and industry partners. We sit down, and we're going to have one soon also at meetings where they tell us, these are the things that we're doing great. These are the things that we're not doing so great. And this is what we're going